August 15, 1967, 3:47 in the afternoon. The dojo was silent. Bruce Lee had his hands behind his back, completely relaxed, his guard so low that he seemed to be standing there waiting for a taxi. In front of him, 5 black belts in karate, each with more than 10 years of experience, looked at him with a mix of contempt and anticipation. Master Tanaka spoke first, his voice loaded with disdain. "Your guard is a joke, Lee. In a real fight, you'd be dead in 2 seconds. Bruce smiled slightly. "Prove it." What happened in the next 10 seconds would become an urban legend that martial arts masters would tell for the next 5 decades. But the true story, what really happened that day in Oakland, California, is much more complex than the legend suggests. To understand that moment, you need to understand who Bruce Lee was in 1967. He was not the global film icon we know today. He had not starred in any major movie. He had not kicked Chuck Norris in the Roman Coliseum. He was a 27-year-old martial arts instructor who was causing serious problems in the traditional martial arts community in America. Bruce's problem was not that he was disrespectful. The problem was that he was breaking the most sacred rule of traditional martial arts. He was teaching white people. In the 1960s, Asian dojos had an unwritten but absolutely inflexible code. Martial arts were ancestral secrets passed down from Asian master to Asian student. Period. Westerners could learn the basics maybe if they paid triple and swore eternal loyalty. But the real secrets, the advanced techniques, those were exclusively for Asians. Bruce Lee changed everything. He opened his school in Oakland and accepted anyone who truly wanted to learn. Whites, blacks, Latinos. He didn't care. If you had dedication, he taught you. And that enraged the traditional masters. They saw him as a traitor, someone selling the secrets of his ancestors for American money. But there was something deeper. Bruce wasn't just teaching traditional martial arts. He was questioning the entire system. He said things that sounded like heresy to orthodox masters. Forms are useless in a real fight. Style doesn't matter. Only what works matters. A punch is just a punch. You don't need to do it the traditional way. For the purists, this was like spitting on the graves of their masters. Bruce was building something called Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. A fighting philosophy that took the best from every martial style and discarded the useless. It was revolutionary, it was practical, and it was deeply threatening to the establishment. In July 1967, a month before the confrontation, 5 masters of traditional karate from San Francisco gathered in a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown. Master Tanaka, 6th Dan in Shotokan, Master Wong, 5th Dan in Orthodox Wing Chun, Master Yamamoto, 7th Dan in Goju-ryu, Master Chen, 5th Dan in Hung-gar, and the youngest, Master Kenji Suzuki, 4th Dan in Kyokushin, known for his explosive temperament and fanatical belief in the superiority of traditional karate. "We need to do something about Lee," said Tanaka, poking at his fried rice with evident irritation. "He's turning martial arts into a circus." Wong nodded. "Yesterday I saw one of his white students trying to teach Wing Chun in the park." Wing Chun. A white guy teaching our technique as if he had the right. It's a disgrace. Yamamoto, the oldest in the group, spoke more calmly. "I've seen videos of Bruce fighting. He's fast, very fast. But his guard," he sighed, shaking his head. "His guard is ridiculous. He's completely exposed. Any first-year student could exploit it." Suzuki slammed his fist on the table. "Then let's do it. We'll go to his dojo, confront him, and show him that his way doesn't work. In front of his students, in front of everyone, we'll humiliate him publicly." "And if he doesn't accept?" asked Chen. Suzuki smiled coldly. "Then everyone will know he's a coward. Either way, we win." The 5 masters agreed on the plan. They would go to Bruce's dojo on August 15th. Each would criticize a different aspect of his technique. And then, when Bruce inevitably defended himself, they would ask him to prove his theories in real combat. 5 against 1. If his Jeet Kune Do was so superior, he shouldn't have any problem. What these 5 masters didn't know, what no one knew except Bruce's closest students, was that Bruce Lee had anticipated exactly this type of confrontation from the moment he opened his school. Bruce was not naive. He knew he was challenging centuries of tradition. He knew the orthodox masters would eventually come for him. And for the past 2 years, he had been preparing specifically for this scenario. You see, Bruce had studied not only martial arts, but psychology, military tactics, and most importantly, he understood something his critics did not. Real fights are not won with the prettiest technique. They are won with the mind. Bruce had developed what he called the structural collapse theory. The idea was simple, but devastating. Every traditional martial style has predictable patterns. Shotokan karate always attacks from certain specific distances. Orthodox Wing Chun relies on center control. Goju-ryu uses hard-to-soft transitions. If you know the patterns, if you have obsessively studied every style, you can predict exactly what your opponent will do before he does it. And that was exactly what Bruce had done. He spent 6 hours a day, every day, studying films of different martial styles. He broke down every movement. He found the structural weaknesses, and then he developed specific countermeasures. By the time those 5 masters decided to confront him, Bruce had already fought them 1,000 times in his mind. August 15th arrived. Bruce was giving a private class to Steve McQueen. Yes, that Steve McQueen, when one of his students came running in. "Bruce, there are 5 Japanese and Chinese masters outside. They say they need to talk to you. Now." Bruce smiled. "How many students do we have in the dojo right now?" "About 20 waiting for the afternoon class." "Perfect," said Bruce. "Tell them to come in. I want all the students to stay and watch this." Steve McQueen, who knew Bruce well enough to recognize that expression, leaned against the wall. "This is going to be interesting," he murmured. The 5 masters entered the dojo with the confidence of men who had never lost a fight. They wore their traditional GIs, each with their black belt perfectly tied, each carrying decades of training in their posture. 20 of Bruce's students, mostly Westerners, moved aside toward the walls, feeling the tension in the air. Bruce was in the center of the tatami, wearing only black training pants and a white t-shirt. No formal uniform, no belt, just Bruce. "Master Lee," Tanaka began with exaggerated formality. "We have come to discuss your approach to martial arts. We are concerned that you are teaching methods that are, shall we say, structurally unsafe." Bruce crossed his arms, his expression neutral. "Continue." Tanaka stepped forward. "Your guard, for example, completely low, exposed. In any real combat, against any trained opponent, they would destroy you in seconds." Wong intervened. "And your theories about discarding traditional forms, it's a lack of respect for centuries of refined knowledge," Yamamoto added. "You teach students who have not earned the right to know these secrets." Chen nodded. "And you mix styles in a way that dilutes the purity of each art." Suzuki, the youngest and most aggressive, took 2 steps toward Bruce. "Basically, Lee, you're a fraud, and we're here to prove it." The dojo fell into absolute silence. All eyes were on Bruce, waiting to see anger, defensiveness, something. Instead, Bruce smiled. A genuine smile, almost grateful. "I appreciate that you came. Really. Because this," he pointed to the 5 masters, "this is exactly what I'm talking about." The 5 masters exchanged confused looks. "What?" asked Tanaka. Bruce walked slowly to the center of the tatami. "You came here with decades of combined training, 5 black belts, hundreds of students among all of you, and your argument is that my guard is bad." He stopped. "Then prove it. Prove that your way is superior. The 5 against me. Here. Now." Suzuki smiled with satisfaction. "That's exactly what we wanted." But Bruce raised a finger. "With one condition. When it's over, if you can still speak, I want you to explain to my students exactly what you learned about the difference between traditional theory and practical reality. Do you accept?" The 5 masters nodded. They were so sure of their victory that Yamamoto even laughed. "This is going to be quick," he whispered to Chen. Bruce positioned himself in the center of the tatami. And then he did something that froze everyone in the room. He put his hands completely behind his back. His guard wasn't low. It was non-existent. He was completely exposed, like a target in a shooting range. "Whenever you're ready," he said calmly. The 5 masters positioned themselves in a semicircle around Bruce, a classic multiple attack formation. Suzuki, the most impulsive, attacked first. He threw a Mae-geri, a classic Kyokushin front kick, fast and powerful, aimed directly at Bruce's exposed torso. And here is where 10 seconds became legend. Bruce moved. No, move isn't the right word. He collapsed the space. In a blink, he was inside Suzuki's kicking range, so close that Suzuki's leg had no extension, no power. Simultaneously, Bruce executed something none of the masters had seen before. An oblique strike to Suzuki's femoral nerve, followed instantly by a sweep to the supporting ankle. Suzuki fell as if his wires had been cut. 2 seconds. Tanaka reacted, throwing a Gyakuzuki, a reverse punch from Shotokan, technically perfect. Bruce slid 30 centimeters to the left. Tanaka's fist grazed his ear, and while Tanaka's arm was still extended, Bruce caught it with a Paksao from Wing Chun, redirecting the momentum, and at the same time executed a side kick to Tanaka's knee. Not hard enough to break it, but enough to collapse Tanaka's posture. Tanaka screamed and fell to his knees. 4 seconds. Wong and Chen attacked simultaneously, trying to use their numerical superiority. Wong with a chain punch from Wing Chun, Chen with a leopard punch from Hung Gar. Bruce did something impossible. He crouched completely, letting both fists pass over his head, and from that low position, he struck the pressure points on both attackers' calves. 2 perfectly synchronized strikes. Wong and Chen momentarily lost control of their legs and stumbled forward. 6 seconds. Yamamoto, the most experienced, had been watching. He waited for the right moment and threw an Uramawashi Geri, a reverse roundhouse kick from Goju Ryu, one of the hardest attacks to defend. Bruce saw it coming. Of course he saw it coming. He leaned back, Matrix-style decades before the Matrix existed, and Yamamoto's leg passed millimeters in front of his face. When Yamamoto's foot landed, Bruce was already there, with a finger jab stopped a centimeter from Yamamoto's eye. A centimeter. Yamamoto froze, instantly understanding that if Bruce had wanted to, he would have blinded him. 8 seconds. Suzuki had gotten up, furious and humiliated. He charged with everything he had. No technique, just rage. Bruce simply let him come, stepped aside at the last second, and used Suzuki's own momentum to send him face first into the dojo wall. Suzuki slid down until he was sitting, dazed and bleeding slightly from the nose. 10 seconds. 10 full seconds from the first attack to the last man on the ground. Bruce still had his hands behind his back. He wasn't even breathing heavily. He walked to the center of the tatami and looked at the 5 masters, all on the ground or kneeling, all completely defeated. "My guard isn't low by mistake," said Bruce, his voice calm but carrying to every corner of the dojo. "It's low because I understand something you don't understand. In a real fight, the guard doesn't protect you. Distance protects you. Time protects you. Understanding your opponent better than he understands himself, that protects you." He approached Suzuki. "You attacked first because you're the youngest, the most impulsive. I knew it before you moved." He moved toward Tanaka. "You threw the classic Shotokan punch because it's what you've done 10,000 times. It's your pattern, your prison." He looked at Yamamoto. "And you waited, because you're the smartest, the most tactical. But even that tactic is predictable when you understand how a Goju Ryu master thinks." Bruce finally took his hands from behind his back. Traditional forms are beautiful. They are art. They are history. But in a real fight, against an opponent who really wants to hurt you, you don't have time for aesthetic perfection. You only have time for what works. He extended his hand to Yamamoto, helping him up. "And that, Master Yamamoto, is why I teach anyone who wants to learn. Because the truth of martial arts doesn't belong to any race, any tradition, any style. It belongs to anyone willing to question everything until they find what really works." The 5 masters rose slowly. Something had changed in their expressions. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something deeper. Respect. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of understanding. Yamamoto bowed deeply. "You have taught me more in 10 seconds than what I have learned in 10 years. Bruce returned the bow. "Then my school is open to you whenever you want to come back." The 5 masters bowed to Bruce and left the dojo in silence. When they left, Bruce's 20 students burst into applause and cheers, but Bruce raised his hand, asking for silence. "No," he said firmly. "We do not celebrate the defeat of other masters. Those men have dedication, discipline, and decades of training. They deserve respect. Today we only proved a point about strategy, not about courage." Steve McQueen approached, shaking his head in disbelief. "Bruce, that was the craziest thing I've seen in my life." Bruce smiled. It was necessary. Because now, when these 5 masters tell what happened today, and believe me, they will tell it, the message will spread. The message that questioning tradition is not disrespect, it's evolution. And that's exactly what happened. The 5 masters did tell the story. They told it in their dojos, in tournaments, in masters' meetings. And every time they told it, the story grew, transformed, became legend. In some versions, Bruce fought 10 men. In others, he knocked them all out with a single move. In others, it all happened in 5 seconds, not 10. But the essence of the story was always the same. Bruce Lee understood something that most martial artists took decades to grasp. Form follows function. Style is a prison if you can't escape it. And true mastery is not perfecting a single path. It is understanding all paths and choosing the right one for each moment. 3 months after the confrontation, Yamamoto became one of Bruce's private students. A year later, Tanaka began incorporating Jeet Kune Do principles into his Shotokan teaching. Even Suzuki, the most resistant, eventually admitted in an interview years later that day changed his complete understanding of martial arts. Bruce Lee lived only 6 more years after that day. He died in 1973 at the age of 32, leaving behind a legacy that transformed martial arts forever. But on August 15, 1967, in a dojo in Oakland, California, in 10 seconds that became urban legend, Bruce proved something that transcended martial arts. He proved that true power does not come from following the rules. It comes from understanding the rules so deeply that you know exactly when to break them. Those 10 seconds were not just a demonstration of speed or technique. They were a philosophical statement executed at combat speed. And the world of martial arts was never the same again.